Hello, it's me, Salty. How we doing? Just adjust the camera. Nope, other way. There we go. That's better. How we doing? I've been thinking, should I adjust the stream avatars to make them a little bit bigger on the screen? They are quite small. Not sure. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. I haven't had a very eventful day. Grandma is still in hospital. Obviously. Yeah. Anyway. So not exactly fun times for me. But that's okay. We'll get through this. These things happen. So, today we're going to be reading Grass for His Pillow by Leon Hearn. I noticed that the text is all in silver rather than gold, like the first book, which makes me wonder if the last book is in bronze or something like that. Some minor, tiny details there. Yeah, oh, that's right. I made a list of things that I wanted to talk about. Ah, yes. Hello, Kitty. Love your toe. Oh, Kitty, I wanted to say congratulations on your affiliate stream. Yeah, I didn't catch any of it. I just had a quick peek at Twitch early in the morning and hello. Yes, I just had a quick peek in the morning at Twitch and saw you were streaming, and I'm just like, I'm too sleepy. But yeah, congratulations. We've got the same number of followers roundabouts, if I'm not mistaken. So, isn't that fun? I will have to peep the VOD and see what you're making. The silver goes well with the blue, and the gold went well with the red. That is an excellent point. I think the last book is purple. So we'll see what happens then. Yes. Okay. So, also the other thing I wanted to mention is, if you're a fan of, if you're a fan of X-Men at all, or if you remember the old cartoon from the 90s, definitely check out X-Men 97. It is very good. My title yesterday is What Made You Look? Yeah, I remember looking at ages ago and thinking, Kitty and I have the same number of followers. Isn't that cool? But obviously the thought happens and then just vanishes. So yes. So previously, well, yesterday rather, we started Grass for His Pillow, and basically Kade woke up, realised that she was heir to a couple of provinces, and had some words with Lord Arai, and then started heading home. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but it is setting up a lot of the book to come. Basically, Kade's realised that she has a lot of actual power now as heir to a couple of provinces. Happens to you. Okay, let's read Kitty. Did a wire weave bracelet in red, green and black for solidarity with Palestine. That's cool. I saw Kate Blanchett's outfit where she wore the black dress with the white back. Then when she lifted the dress, it was white and green, and she was on a red carpet. I thought that was brilliant. Well done. Also showed other projects I'd done while not fully upright. Okay. Are you wondering, afraid to check it out because so often you can't go home? Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it, Kitty. But it's set in 97. I think the original was set in 92. So it's like a continuation almost. And I'm so sure I've seen this storyline before. So I'm thinking this might be a storyline from the comic that they're sort of basically redoing. But yes, I very much enjoyed it. It started off like, X-Men come in and fight some Sentinels, and it just kind of snowballs from there. It was very cool. Happens to you, yeah. In one ear, and it just thought appears, and then poof. Like how you're supposed to add things to stream. You mean like you can't remember what to add? I have tea tonight. I tell you, I took a 40-minute nap before stream, and I didn't want to get back up again. That's so nostalgic, yeah. Because when I was a kid, I used to watch X-Men before school, and I could never consistently watch it, so I didn't know. I couldn't follow the story threads, so I just had to like pick up episodes randomly when I could, and I didn't actually, half the time you'd miss the conclusions or whatever. So I just kind of like got bits and bobs of the story as it went along. It was nice to actually. I probably should go back and watch the original X-Men. Cartoons for grown-ups. Well, X-Men, I don't think anyone can enjoy X-Men. It's one of those comics with adult themes. Not adult themes, but like themes which affect all of us. I should add music to stream while you're streaming. Then you don't think of it again until next stream. Ah, yes. It took me ages to find a comfy sort of music track that didn't have DMCA and wasn't going to get bopped by Twitch. It's only recently that I actually added that music to the VOD again, and it doesn't seem to get bopped, so that's good. Showing age, talking about being a grown-up. Yeah, it took me a long time to replace the phrase grown-up with adult. But yeah, just trying to think of other. I think maybe Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss are actually adult cartoons. So yeah. Anyway. Okay, so Kader. So she was mourning her relationship with Takeo, who was captured by the tribe, pretty much. Unfortunately, he had to go with them because that was his promise. and Arai, Lord Arai, was very upset. We don't know whether Arai is going to turn into another Aida or not. He seems very, what's the word? He's like a bull in a china shop. Some music has changes in pace or volume. Yeah, unfortunately, you've got to either, I don't know, cut it yourself or have it repeating, or just keep looking for DMCA free music. Not sure you've seen those, but you do follow one of the voice actors on Twitch. Oh, that's cool. Just before we start reading, I know we've only got like 2 viewers, but that's okay.
Glory to you and your house.
Glory to you, Kitty. That's okay, VOD watchers and friendos who are watching now, go and check out Kitty's Plane. Kitty's Plane is a very lovely streamer who makes things and likes to chat. That's okay, Kitty. You absolutely deserve it. Is that your emote? Of course, because you're affiliate now, you have emotes. Are you going to have cat emotes? That would be nice. I still haven't gotten around to doing my extra emotes. I want to do a clap emote. I want to do clap, I want to do browse, and I want to do a wave. Alright, so we're up to chapter 3. And the other thing I noticed about this book, just quickly, is that Keide's story is told from a third-person point of view. Takeo's story is told from a first-person point of view, which is rather unusual for a book when they swap characters to swap point of views. So this chapter, chapter 3, is from Takeo's point of view, and it is told from a first-person point of view. Came from Twitch, haven't got to the real ones. Fair enough, fair enough. Also, while I'm reading, just I hope you got your hard drive sorted out. It was kind of last minute tech support at the end of stream yesterday. But yeah, I hope you got everything transferred and freed up some space on your main drive. Alright, so chapter 3. The sounds of the temple at Terayama, the midnight bell, the chanting of the monks, faded from my hearing as I followed the 2 masters, Kikuta Kotaro and Muto Kenji, down a lonely path, steep and overgrown alongside the stream. We went swiftly, the noise of the tumbling water hiding our footsteps. We said little and we saw no one. By the time we came to Yamagata, it was nearly dawn, and the first cocks were crowing. The streets of the town were deserted, though the curfew was lifted, and the Tohan no longer there to patrol them. We came to a merchant's house in the middle of the town, not far from the inn where we had stayed during the Festival of the Dead. I already knew the street from when I had explored the town at night. It seemed a lifetime ago. Kenji's daughter, Yuki, opened the gate as though she had been waiting for us all night. Even though we came so silently that not a dog barked. She said nothing, but I caught the intensity in the look she gave me. Her face, her vivid eyes, her graceful, muscular body brought back all too clearly the terrible events at Inuyama the night Shigeru died. I had half expected to see her at Teriyama, for it was she who had travelled day and night to take Shigeru's head to the temple and break the news of his death. There were many things I would have liked to have questioned her about. Her journey, the uprising at Yamagata, the overthrow of the Tohan. As her father and the Kakuta master went ahead into the house, I lingered a little so that she and I stepped onto the veranda together. A low light was burning by the doorway. Didn't move things yet, managed to some things, then got ready for these things, okay, then streamed, then went to the thing, and here we are. Oh, Kitty, you need some sleep. I love that shift in perspective. Yeah, me too. I think this book is supposed to have been written by Takeo. A low light was burning by the doorway. She said, "I did not expect to see you alive again. I did not expect to live." Remembering her skill and her ruthlessness, I added, "I owe you a huge debt. I can never repay you." She smiled. "I was repaying debts of my own. You owe me nothing, but I hope we will be friends." The word did not seem strong enough to describe what we already were. She had brought Shigeru's sword, Jato, to me, and had helped me in his rescue and revenge, the most important and most desperate acts of my life. "Hello, Annie. How you doing? It's nice to see you. Thank you for popping in." I'm just getting started. I was filled with gratitude for her. They changed mod view? Really? Oh. I was filled with gratitude for her, mingled with admiration. She disappeared for a moment and came back with water. I washed my feet, listening to the two masters talking within the house. They planned to rest for a few hours, then I would travel on with Kotaro. I shook my head wearily. I was tired of listening. "Come," she said, and led me into the center of the house where, as in Inuyama, there was a concealed room as narrow as an eel's bed. "Am I a prisoner again?" I said, looking around at the windowless walls. "No, it's only for your own safety, to rest for a few hours. Then you will travel on." "I know, I heard." "Of course," she said, "I forget you hear everything." "Too much," I said, sitting down on the mattress that was already spread out on the floor. "Gifts are hard, but it's better to have them than not. I'll get you some food, and tea is ready." She came back in a few moments. I drank the tea but could not face food. "There's no hot water to bathe," she said. "I'm sorry." "I'll live." Twice already she had bathed me. Once here in Yamagata, when I did not know who she was, and she had scrubbed my back and massaged my temples, and then again in Inuyama, when I could barely walk. The memory came flooding over me. Her gaze met mine, and I knew she was thinking of the same thing. Then she looked away and said quietly, "I'll leave you to sleep." I placed my knife close to the mattress and slid beneath the quilt without bothering to undress. I thought of what Yuki had said about gifts. I did not think I would ever be as happy again as I had been in the village where I was born, Mino. But in Mino, I was a child, and now the village was destroyed, my family all dead. I knew I must not dwell on the past. I had agreed to come to the tribe. It was because of my gifts that they wanted me so badly, and it was only with the tribe that I would learn to develop and control the skills I had been given. I thought of Keide, whom I had left sleeping at Teriyama. Hopelessness came over me, followed by resignation. I would never see her again. I would have to forget her. Slowly, the town started to wake around me. Finally, as the light brightened beyond the doors, I slept. I woke suddenly to the sound of men and horses in the street beyond the walls of the house. The light in the room had changed, and as though the sun had crossed above the roof. But I had no idea how long I'd slept. A man was shouting, and, in reply, a woman was complaining, growing angry. I caught the gist of the words. The men were arise, going from house to house, looking for me. I pushed back the quilt and felt for the knife. As I picked it up, the door slid open, and Kenji came silently into the room. The false wall was locked into place behind him. He looked at me briefly, shook his head and sat down cross-legged on the floor in the tiny space between the mattress and the wall. I recognized the voices. The men had been at Teriyama with Arai. I heard Yuki calming the angry woman down, offering the men a drink. "We're all on the same side now," she said, and laughed. "Do you think if Otori Teiko were here, we'd be able to hide him?" The men drank quickly and left. As their footsteps died away, Kenji snorted through his nose and gave me one of his disparaging looks. "No one can pretend not to have heard of you in Yamagata," he said. "Shigeru's death made him a god. Aida's has turned you into a hero. It's a story the people are wild about." He sniffed and added, "Don't let it go to your head. It's extremely annoying. Now Arai's mounted a full-scale search for you. He's taking your disappearance as a personal insult." "Oh, Arai's that kind of guy, is he?" "Luckily, your face is not too well known here, but we'll have to disguise you." He studied my features, frowning. "That Otori look. You'll have to conceal it." He was interrupted by a sound outside as the wall was lifted away. Kikuta Kotaro came in, followed by Akio, the young man who had been one of my captors in Inuyama. I think that's the guy he stabbed in the hand. Yuki stepped after them, bringing them tea. The Kikuta master gave me a nod as I bowed to him. "Akio has been out in the town, listening to the news." Akio dropped to his knees before Kenji and inclined his head slightly to me. I responded in the same way. When he and the other tribe members had kidnapped me in Inuyama, They had been doing their best to restrain me without hurting me. I had been fighting in earnest. I had wanted to kill him. I had cut him. I could see now that his left hand still bore a half-healed scar, red and inflamed. We had hardly spoken before. He had reprimanded me for my lack of manners, and had accused me of breaking every rule of the tribe. There had been little goodwill between us. Now, when our eyes met, I felt his deep hostility. It seems Lord Arai is furious. What's his name? Akio is talking. It seems Lord Arai is furious that this person left without permission, and refused a marriage that the Lord desired. Lord Arai has issued orders for this person's arrest, and he intends to investigate the organization known as the Tribe, which he considers illegal and undesirable. He bowed again to Kotaro and said stiffly, "I'm sorry, but I do not know what this person's name is to be." The master nodded and stroked his chin, saying nothing. We had talked about, thank you, Kitty. We had talked about names before, and he had told me to continue using Takeo, though, as he said, it had never been a tribe name. Was I to take the family name of Kikuta now? And what would my given name be? I did not want to give up Takeo, the name Shigeru had given me. But if I was no longer to be one of the Otori, what right did I have to it? Arai is offering rewards for information, Yuki said, placing a bowl of tea on the matting in front of each of us. No one in Yamagata will dare to volunteer information, Akio said. They'll be dealt with if they do. It's what I was afraid of, Kotaro said to Kenji. Arai has had no real dealings with us, and now he fears our power. Should we eliminate him? Akio said eagerly. Kotaro made a movement with his hand, and the young man bowed again and fell silent. With Aida gone, there is already a lack of stability. If Arai should perish too, who knows what anarchy would break out? Kenji said, I don't see Arai as any great danger. Threats and bluster, perhaps, but no more than that in the long run. As things have turned out now, he is our best hope for peace. He glanced at me. That's what we desire above all. We need some degree of order for our work to flourish. Arai will return to Inuyama and make that his capital, Yuki said. It is easier to defend and more central than Kumamoto, and he has claimed all Aida's lands by right of conquest. Kotaro grunted. He turned to me. I had planned for you to return to Inuyama with me. I have matters to attend to there for the next few weeks, and you would have begun your training there. However, it may be better if you remain here for a few days. We will then take you north, beyond the Middle Country. Sneezy. We will then take you north beyond the Middle Country to another of the Kikuta houses, where no one has heard of Otori Takeo, where you will start a new life. Do you know how to juggle? I shook my head. You have a week to learn. Akio will teach you. Yuki and some of the other actors will accompany you. I will meet you in Matsue." I bowed, saying nothing. I looked from under my lowered eyelids at Akio. He was staring downwards, frowning, the line deep between his eyes. He was only 3 or 4 years older than I was, but at that moment it was possible to see what he would be like as an old man. So, he was a juggler. I was sorry I had cut his clever juggler's hand, but I thought my actions perfectly justified. Still, the fight lay between us, along with other feelings, unresolved, festering. Kotaro said, "Kenji, your association with Lord Shigeru has singled you out in this affair. Too many people know that this is your main place of residence. Arai will certainly have you arrested if you stay here." "I'll go to the mountains for a while," Kenji replied. "Visit the old people. Spend some time with the children." He smiled, looking like my harmless old teacher again. "Excuse me, but what is this person to be called?" Akio said. "He can take a name as Nacta for the time being," Kotaro said. "What his tribe name is depends." There was some meaning behind his words that I did not understand, but Akio all too clearly did. "His father renounced the tribe," he burst out. "He turned his back on us." "But his son has returned with all the gifts of the Kikuta," the master replied. "However, for now, in everything you are his senior. Takeo, you will submit to Akio and learn from him." A smile played on his lips. I think he knew how hard that would be for me. Kenji's face was rueful, as if he also could foresee trouble. "Akio has many skills," Kotaro went on. "You are to master them." He waited for my acceptance, then told Akio and Yuki to leave. Yuki refilled the tea bowls before she left, and the 2 older men drank noisily. I could smell food cooking. It seemed like days since I'd last eaten. I was sorry I had not accepted Yuki's offer of food the previous night. I was faint with hunger. Kotaro said, "I told you I was first cousin to your father. I did not tell you that he was older than me, and would have become master at our grandfather's death. Akio is my nephew and my heir. Your return raises questions of inheritance and seniority. How we deal with them depends on your conduct in the next few months." It took me a couple of moments to grasp his meaning. "Akio was brought up in the tribe," I said slowly. "He knows everything I don't know. There must be many others like that. I've no wish to take his or anyone else's place." "There are many," Kotaro replied, "and all of them more obedient, better trained, and more deserving than you. But none has the Kikuta gift of hearing to the extent that you have it, and no one else could have gone alone into Yamagata Castle as you did." That episode seemed like something from a past life. I could hardly remember the impulse that had driven me to climb into the castle and release into death the hidden who were encaged in baskets and hung from the castle walls. The first time I had killed, I wished I had never done it. If I had not drawn the tribe's attention to myself so dramatically, maybe they would not have taken me before. I shook myself. There was no point in endlessly trying to unravel the threads that had woven Shigeru's death. However, now I have said that, Kotaro continued, you must know that I cannot treat you in any way differently from the others of your generation. I cannot have favorites. Whatever your skills, they are useless to us unless we have your obedience. I don't have to remind you that you have already pledged this to me. You will stay here for a week. You must not go outside or let anyone know you are here. In that week you must learn enough to pass as a juggler. I will meet you at Matsue before winter. It's up to you to go through the training with complete obedience. Who knows when I will meet you again, Kenji said, regarding me with his usual mixture of affection and exasperation. My work with you is done, he went on. I found you, taught you, kept you alive somehow, and brought you back to the tribe. You'll find Akio tougher than I was. He grinned, showing the gaps between his teeth. But Yuki will look after you. There was something in the way that he said it that made the colour rise in my face. Oh, but Yuki will look after you. Here we go. We had done nothing, had not even touched each other, but something existed between us, and Kenji was aware of it. Both masters were grinning as they stood up and embraced me. Kenji gave me a cuff round the head. Do as you're told, he said, and learn to juggle. I wished Kenji and I could have spoken alone. There was so much still unresolved between us. Yet, maybe it was better that he should bid me farewell, as though he were truly an affectionate teacher whom I had outgrown. Besides, as I was to learn, the tribe do not waste time on the past, and do not like to be confronted with it. Interesting, I thought the tribe was all about the past. After they'd left, the room seemed gloomier than ever, airless and stuffy. I could hear through the house the sounds of their departure. Not for them the elaborate preparations, the long goodbyes of most travellers. Kenji and Kotaro just walked out the door, carrying everything they needed for the road in their hands. Light bundles in wrapping cloths, a spare pair of sandals, some rice cakes flavoured with salted plums. The Irish goodbye. I thought about them and the roads they must have walked, tracing and retracing their way across the 3 countries, and beyond, for all I knew, following the vast web the tribe spun from village to village, town to town. Wherever they went, they would find relatives. They would never be without shelter or protection. I heard Yuki say she would walk with them to the bridge, and heard the woman who'd been angry with the soldiers reply. Take care of yourselves, the woman called after them. The footsteps faded down the street. The room seemed even more depressing and lonely. I couldn't imagine being confined in it for a week. Almost without realizing what I was doing, I was already planning to get out. Hi Mao. How you doing? I hope you and Puppy are well. Currently in the story, we're reading from Takeo's point of view. I was already planning to get out. Not to escape. I was quite resigned to staying with the tribe. Just to get out. Partly to look at Yamagata again by night. Partly to see if I could. Not long after, I heard someone approaching. The door slid back and a woman stepped in. She was carrying a tray of food. Rice, pickles, a small piece of dried fish, a bowl of soup. She knelt, placing the tray on the floor. "Here, eat. You must be hungry." I was famished. The smell of the food made me dizzy. I fell on it like a wolf. She sat and watched me while I ate. "So you're the one who's been causing my poor old husband so much trouble," she remarked as I was polishing the bowl for the last grains of rice. Kenji's wife. I shot a look at her and met her gaze. Her face was smooth, as pale as his, with the similarity that many long-married couples attain. Her hair was still thick and black, with just a few white hairs appearing at the centre of her scalp. She was thick-set and solid, a true townswoman with square, short-fingered, capable hands. The only thing I could remember Kenji saying about her was that she was a good cook, and indeed the food was delicious. If you remember, Kenji is a bit of a ladies' man. I told her so, and as the smile moved from her lips to her eyes, I saw in an instant that she was Yuki's mother. Their eyes were the same shape, and when she smiled, the expression was the same. "Who'd have thought you'd have turned up after all these years?" she went on, sounding garrulous and motherly. "I knew Isamu, your father, well, and no one knew anything about you until that incident with Shintaro. Imagine you hearing and outwitting the most dangerous assassin in the 3 countries. The Kikuta family were delighted to discover Isamu had left a son. We all were, and one with such talents too." I didn't reply. She seemed a harmless old woman, but then Kenji had appeared a harmless old man. Old? She's not old. She's barely got any grey. I felt in myself a faint echo of the mistrust I'd had when I first saw Kenji in the street in Hagi. I tried to study her without appearing to, and she stared openly at me. I felt she was challenging me in some way, but I had no intention of responding until I'd found out more about her and her skills. "Who killed my father?" I said instead. "No one's ever found out. It was years before we even knew for certain that he was dead. He'd found an isolated place to hide himself in." Was it someone from the tribe?" That made her laugh, which angered me. "Kenji said you trusted no one. It's good, but you can trust me." "Like I could trust him," I muttered. "Shigeru's scheme would have killed you," she said mildly. "It's important for the Kikuta, for the whole tribe, to keep you alive. It's so rare these days to find such a wealth of talent." I grunted at that, trying to discern some hidden meaning beneath her flattery. She poured tea, and I drank it at a gulp. My head ached from the stuffy room. "You're tense," she said, taking the bowl from my hands and placing it on the tray. She moved the tray to one side and came closer to me. Kneeling behind me, she began to massage my neck and shoulders. Her fingers were strong, pliant, and sensitive, all at the same time. She worked over my back and then, saying, "Close your eyes," began on my head. The sensation was exquisite. I almost groaned aloud. Her hands seemed to have a life of their own. I gave my head to them, feeling as though it were floating off my neck. Then I heard the door slide. My eyes snapped open. I could still feel her fingers in my scalp, but I was alone in the room. A shiver ran down my spine. Kenji's wife might look harmless, but her powers were probably as great as her husband's or her daughter's. She'd also taken away my knife. I was given the name of Minoru, but hardly anyone called me by it. When we were alone, Yuki occasionally called me Takeo, letting the word form in her mouth, as if she were granting herself a gift. Akio only said "you," and always in the form used when addressing inferiors. He was entitled to. He was my senior in years, training, and knowledge, and I'd been ordered to submit to him. It rankled, though. I hadn't realized how much I had become accustomed to being treated with respect as an Otori warrior and Shigeru's heir. My training began that afternoon. I had not known that the muscles in my hands could ache so much. My right wrist was still weak from my first fight with Akio. By the end of the day, it was throbbing again. We started with exercises to make the fingers deft and supple. Even with his damaged hand, Akio was far faster and far more dexterous than me. We sat opposite each other, and time and again he wrapped my hands before I could move them. He was so quick, I could not believe that I could not even see the movement. At first, the wrap was no more than a light tap. But as the afternoon turned to evening, and we both grew tired and frustrated by my clumsiness, he began to hit me in earnest. Yuki, who had come into the room to join us, said quietly, "If you bruise his hands, it will take longer." "Maybe I should bruise his head," Akio muttered. And next time, before I could move my hands away, he seized both in his right hand, and with the left hit me on the cheek. It was a real blow, strong enough to make my eyes water. "Not so bold without a knife," he said, releasing my hands and holding his own ready again. Yuki said nothing. I could feel anger simmering inside me. It was outrageous to me that he should hit an Otori lord. The confined room, the deliberate teasing, Yuki's indifference, all combined to drive me towards loss of control. The next time, Akio made the same move with opposite hands. The blow was even harder, making my neck snap back. My sight went black, then red. I felt the rage erupt just as it had with Kenji. I hurled myself at him. It's been many years since I was 17, since the fury seized me and threw me beyond self-control. But I still recall the way the release felt, as though my animal self had been unleashed, and then I'd have no memory of what happened after that, just the blind feeling of not caring if I lived or died, of refusing to be forced or bullied any longer. after the first moment of surprise, when I had my hands round Akio's throat. The two of them restrained me easily. Yuki did her trick of pressing into my neck, and as I began to black out, she hit me harder than I would have thought possible in the stomach. I doubled over, retching. Akio slid out from beneath me and pinioned my arms behind my back. We sat on the matting, as close as lovers, breathing heavily. The whole episode had lasted no more than a minute. I couldn't believe Yuki had hit me so hard. I thought she would have been on my side. I stared at her with rancor in my heart. "That's what you have to learn to control," she said calmly. Akio released my arms and knelt in readiness. "Let's start again." "Don't hit me in the face," I said. "Yuki's right. It's best not to bruise your hands," he replied. "So be quicker." I vowed inwardly I would not let him hit me again. The next time, though, I did not get close to wrapping him. I moved my head and my hands away before he could touch me. Watching him, I began to sense the slightest intimation of movement. I finally managed to graze the surface of his knuckles. He said nothing, nodded as if satisfied, but barely, and we moved on to working with juggling balls. So the hours went, passing the ball from one palm to the other, from palm to mat to palm. By the end of the second day, I could juggle 3 balls in the ancient style, and by the end of the third day, 4. Akio still sometimes managed to catch me off guard and slap me, but mostly I learned to avoid it, in an elaborate dance of balls and hands. By the end of the 4th day, I was seeing balls behind my eyelids, and I was bored and restless beyond words. Some people, and I guessed Akio was one, work persistently at these skills because they are obsessed by them, and by their desire to master them. I quickly realized I was not among them. I couldn't see the point to juggling. It didn't interest me. I was learning in the hardest of ways, and for the worst of reasons, because I would be beaten if I did not. I submitted to Akio's harsh teaching because I had to, but I hated it, and I hated him. Twice more his goading led to the same outburst of fury, but just as I was learning to anticipate him, so he and Yuki came to know the signs, and were ready to restrain me before anyone got hurt. That 4th night, once the house was silent and everyone slept, I decided to go exploring. I was bored. I could not sleep. I was longing to breathe some fresh air, but above all, I wanted to see if I could. For obedience to the tribe to make sense, I had to find out if I could be disobedient. Forced obedience seemed to have as little point as juggling. They might as well tie me up all day and night like a dog, and I would growl and bite on command. I knew the layout of the house. I had mapped it when I had nothing else to do but listen. I knew where everyone slept at night. Yuki and her mother were in a room at the back of the building, with 2 other women whom I had not seen, though I had heard them. One served in the shop, joking loudly with the customers in the local accent. Yuki addressed her as Auntie. The other was more of a servant. She did the cleaning and most of the food preparation, always first up in the morning and the last to lie down at night. She spoke very little, in a low voice with a northern accent. Her name was Sadako. 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 Everyone in the household bullied her cheerfully and took advantage of her. Her replies were always quiet and deferential. Oh, that sucks. I felt I knew these women, though I'd never set eyes on either of them. Akio and the other men, 3 of them, slept in a loft in the roof space above the shop. Every night they took it in turns to join the guards at the back of the house. Akio had done it the night before, and I'd suffered for it, as sleeplessness added an extra edge to his teasing. Before the maid went to bed, while the lamps were still lit, I would hear one or other of the men help her close the doors and the outer shutters, the wooden panels sliding into place with a series of dull thumps that invariably set the dogs barking. There were 3 dogs, each with its own distinctive voice. The same man fed them every night, whistling to them through his teeth in a particular way that I practiced when I was alone, thankful that no one else had the Kikuta gift of hearing. The front doors of the house were barred at night, and the rear gates unguarded, but one smaller door was left unbarred. It led into a narrow space between the house and the outer wall, at the end of which was the privy. I was escorted there 3 or 4 times a day. I'd been out in the yard after dark a couple of times to bathe in the small bathhouse which stood in the backyard, between the end of the house and the gates. Though I was kept hidden, it was, as Yuki said, for my own safety. As far as I could tell, no one seriously expected me to try and escape. I was not under guard. I lay for a long time, listening to the sounds of the house. I could hear the breathing of the women in the downstairs room, the men in the loft. Beyond the walls, the town gradually quietened. I had gone into a state I recognized. I could not explain it, but it was as familiar to me as my own skin. I did not feel either fear or excitement. My brain switched off. I was all instinct and ears. Time altered and slowed. It did not matter how long it took to open the door of the concealed room. I knew I would do it eventually, and I would do it soundlessly, just as I would get to the outer door silently. I was standing by this outer door, aware of every noise around me, when I heard footsteps. Kenji's wife got up, crossed the room where she'd been sleeping, and went towards the concealed room. The door slid. A few seconds passed. She came out of the room and, a lamp in her hand, walked swiftly but not anxiously towards me. Briefly I thought of going invisible, but I knew there was no point. She would almost certainly be able to discern me, and if she couldn't, she would raise the household. Saying nothing, I jerked my head in the direction of the door that led to the privy, and went back to the hidden room. As I passed her, I was aware of her eyes on me. She didn't say anything either, just nodded at me, but I felt she knew I was trying to get out. The room was stuffier than ever. Sleep now seemed impossible. I was still deep within my state of silent instinct. I tried to discern her breathing, but could not hear it. Finally, I convinced myself that she must be asleep again. I got up, slowly opened the door, and stepped out into the room. The lamp still burned. Kenji's wife sat there next to it. Her eyes were closed, but she opened them and saw me standing in front of her. "Going to piss again?" she said in her deep voice. "I can't sleep." "Sit down, I'll make some tea." She got to her feet in one movement. Despite her age and size, she was as lithe as a girl. She put her hand on my shoulder and pushed me gently down onto the matting. "Don't run away," she warned, mockery in her voice. I sat, but I was not really thinking. I was still bent on getting outside. I heard the kettle hiss as she blew on the embers, heard the chink of iron and pottery. She came back with the tea, knelt to pour it, and handed me a bowl which I leant forward to take. The light glowed between us. As I took the bowl, I looked into her eyes, saw the amusement and mockery in them, saw that she had been flattering me before. She did not really believe in my talents. Then her eyelids flickered and closed. Oh. I might read that bit again. The light glowed between us. As I took the bowl, I looked into her eyes, saw the amusement and mockery in them, saw that she had been flattering me before. She did not really believe in my talents. Then her eyelids flickered and closed. I dropped the bowl, caught her as she swayed and sat down, already deeply asleep, on the matting. In the lamplight, the spilled tea steamed. I should have been horrified, but I wasn't. I just felt the cold satisfaction that the skills of the tribe bring with them. I was sorry that I hadn't thought of this before, but it had never occurred to me that I would have any power at all over the wife of the Muto master. I was mainly relieved that now nothing was going to stop me getting outside. As I slipped through the side door into the yard, I heard the dogs stir. I whistled to them, high and quiet, so only they and I would hear. One came padding up to investigate me, tail wagging. In the way of all dogs, he liked me. I put out my hand. He laid his head on it. "Aw, puppy." The moon was low in the sky, but it gave enough light to make his eyes shine yellow. We stared at each other for a few moments. Then he yawned, showing his big white teeth, lay down at my feet and slept. Inside my head, the thought niggled, "A dog is one thing, the Muto master's wife is quite another." But I chose not to listen. I crouched down and stroked the dog's head a couple of times while I looked at the wall. Of course, I had neither weapons nor tools. The overhang of the wall's roof was wide and so pitched that, without grapples, it was impossible to get a handhold. In the end, I climbed onto the roof of the bathhouse and jumped across. I went invisible, crept along the top of the wall, away from the rear gate and the guards, and dropped into the street just before the corner. I stood against the wall for a few moments, listening. I heard the murmur of voices from the guards. The dogs were silent, and the whole town seemed to sleep. As I had done before, the night I climbed into Yamagata Castle, I worked my way from street to street, heading in a zigzag direction towards the river. The willow trees still stood beneath the setting moon. The branches moved gently in the autumn wind, the leaves already yellow, one or two floating down into the water. I crouched in their shelter. I had no idea who controlled this town now. The lord whom Shigeru had visited, Aida's ally, had been overthrown along with the Tohan when the town erupted at the news of Shigeru's death, but presumably Arai had installed some kind of interim governor. I could not hear any sound of patrols. I stared at the castle, unable to make out if the heads of the hidden, whom I had released from torture into death, had been removed or not. I could hardly believe my own memory. It was as if I had dreamed it, or been told the story of someone else who had done it. I was thinking about that night, and how I had swum beneath the surface of the river when I heard footsteps approaching along the bank. The ground was soft and damp, and the footfall was muffled, but whoever it was quite close. I should have left then, but I was curious to see who had come to the river at this time of night, and I knew he would not see me. He was a man of less than average height, and very slight. In the darkness I could make out nothing else. He looked around furtively, and then knelt at the water's edge, as if he were praying. The wind blew off the river, bringing the tang of water and mud, and along with it the man's own smell. His scent was somehow familiar. I sniffed the air like a dog, trying to place it. After a moment or two it came to me. It was the smell of the tannery. This man must be a leather worker, therefore an outcast. I knew then who he was. The man who had spoken to me after I had climbed into the castle. His brother had been one of the tortured hidden to whom I had brought the release of death. I had used my second self on the riverbank, and this man had thought he had seen an angel, and had spread the rumor of the angel of Yamagata. I could guess why he was there praying. He must also be from the hidden, maybe hoping to see the angel again. I remembered how the first time I saw him, I had thought I had to kill him, but had not been able to bring myself to do so. I gazed on him now with the troubled affection you have for someone whose life you have spared. Hello, Pixie. I felt something else too, a pang of loss and regret for the certainties of my childhood, for the words and rituals that had comforted me then, seeming as eternal as the turn of the seasons and the passage of the moon and the stars in the sky. I had been plucked from my life among the hidden when Shigeru had saved me at Mino. Since then I had kept my origins concealed, never speaking of them to anyone, never praying openly. But sometimes at night I still prayed after the manner of the faith I was raised in, to the secret God that my mother worshipped. And now I felt a yearning to approach this man and talk to him. As an Otori lord, even as a member of the tribe, I should have shunned a leather worker, for they slaughter animals and are considered unclean. But the hidden believe all men are created equal by the secret God, and so I had been taught by my mother. Still, some vestige of caution kept me out of sight beneath the willow, though, as I heard his whispered prayer, I found my tongue repeating the words along with him. I would have left it like that. I was not a complete fool, even though that night I was behaving like one. If if I had not caught the sound of men approaching over the nearest bridge. It was a patrol of some sort, probably Arai's men, though I had no way of knowing for sure. They must have stopped on the bridge and gazed down the river. "There's that lunatic," I heard one say. "Makes me sick having to see him there night after night." His accent was local, but the next man who spoke sounded as if he came from the west. "Give him a beating. He'll soon give up coming." "We've done that. Makes no difference." "Comes back for more, does he?" "Let's lock him up for a few nights." "Let's just chuck him in the river." They laughed. I heard their footsteps grow louder as they began to run, and then fade a little as they passed behind a row of houses. They were still some way off. The man on the bank had heard nothing. I was not going to stand by and watch while the guards threw my man into the river. My man. He already belonged to me. I slipped out from beneath the branches of the willow and ran towards him. I tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned, hissed at him, "Come and hide quickly." He recognized me at once, and with a great gasp of amazement, threw himself at my feet, praying incoherently. In the distance I could hear the patrol approaching down the street that ran along the river. I shook the man, lifted his head, put my finger to his lips and, trying to remember not to look him in the eye, pulled him into the shelter of the willows. I should leave him here, I thought. I can go invisible and avoid the patrol. But then I heard them tramping round the corner and realized I was too late. The breeze ruffled the water and set the willow leaves quivering. In the distance, a cock crowed. A temple bell sounded. "Gone!" a voice exclaimed, not 10 paces from us. Another man swore. "Filthy outcasts." "Which is worse, do you reckon, outcasts or hidden?" "Some are both. That's the worst." I heard the slicing sigh of a sword being drawn. One of the soldiers slashed at a clump of reeds, and then at the willow itself. The man next to me tensed. He was trembling, but made no sound. The smell of tanned leather was so strong in my nostrils, I was sure the guards would catch it, but the rank smell of the river must have masked it. I was thinking I might attract their attention away from the outcast, split myself, and somehow evade them, when a pair of ducks, sleeping in the reeds, suddenly flew off, quacking loudly, skimming the surface of the water and shattering the quiet of the night. The men shouted in surprise, then jeered at each other. They joked and grumbled for a little longer, threw stones at the ducks, then left in the opposite direction to the one they'd come from. I heard their footsteps echo through the town, fading until even I could hear them no more. I began to scold the man. "What are you doing out at this time of night? They'd have thrown you in the river if they'd found you." He bent his head to my feet again. "Sit up," I urged him. "Speak to me." He sat, glanced briefly upwards at my face, then dropped his eyes. "I come every night I can," he muttered. "I've been praying to God for one more sight of you. I can never forget what you did for my brother, for the rest of them." He was silent for a moment, then whispered, "I thought you were an angel, but people say you are Lord Otori's son. You killed Lord Aida in revenge for his death. Now we have a new lord, Arai Daichi from Kumamoto. His men have been combing the town for you. I thought they must know you were here, so I came tonight again to see you." Whatever form you choose to come in, you must be one of God's angels to do what you did." It was a shock to hear my story repeated by this man. It brought home to me the danger I was in. "Go home. Tell no one you saw me." I prepared to leave. He did not seem to hear me. He was in an almost exalted state, his eyes glittering, flecks of spittle shimmering on his lips. "Stay, Lord," he urged me. "Every night I bring food for you, food and wine. We must share them together. Then you must bless me, and I will die happy." He took up a small bundle. Unwrapping the food and placing it on the ground between us, he began to say the first prayer of the hidden. The familiar words made my neck tingle, and when he'd finished, I responded quietly with the second prayer. Together we made the sign over the food and over ourselves, and I began to eat. The meal was pitifully sparse. A millet cake with a trace of smoked fish skin buried in it. But it had all the elements of the rituals of my childhood. The outcast brought out a small flask and poured from it into a wooden bowl. It was some home-brewed liquor, far rougher than wine, and we had no more than a mouthful each, but the smell reminded me of my home. I felt my mother's presence strongly, and tears pricked my eyelids. "Are you a priest?" I whispered, wondering how he had escaped the Tohan persecution. "My brother was our priest, the one you released in mercy. Since his death I do what I can for our people, those who are left." "Did many die under Aida?" "In the east, hundreds. My parents fled here many years ago, and under the Otori, there was no persecution. But in the 10 years since Yegahara, no one has been safe here."
Zhu Li, do the thing!
Thank you, Annie. Takeo's being naughty. He should not have spoken to the guy. Oops. Bump. Okay. Where was I? Yes. But in the 10 years since Yegahara, no one has been safe here. Now we have a new overlord, Arai. No one knows which way he will jump. They say he has other fish to gut. We may be left alone while he deals with the tribe. His voice dropped to a whisper at this last word, as though just to utter it was to invite retribution. "And that would only be justice," he went on, "for it's they who are murderers and assassins." Annie, there's no worries. You have a good sleep. And thank you for dropping by and listening to me. I very much appreciate it. Thank you. Have good bed. For it's they who are the murderers and the assassins. Our people are harmless. We are forbidden to kill. He shot me an apologetic look. Of course, Lord, your case was different. He had no idea how different, or how far I'd gone from my mother's teaching. Dogs were barking in the distance. Roosters announced the coming day. I had to go. yet I was reluctant to leave. "You're not afraid?" I asked him. "Often I am terrified. I don't have the gift of courage, but my life is in God's hands. He has some plan for me. He sent you to us." "I am not an angel," I said. "How else would one of the Autori know our prayers?" He replied. "Who but an angel would share food with someone like me?" I knew the risk I was taking, but I told him anyway. Lord Shigeru rescued me from Aida at Mino. I did not have to spell it out. He was silent for a moment as if awed. Then he whispered, "Mino! We thought no one survived from there. How strange are the ways of God. You have been spared for some great purpose. If you are not an angel, you are marked by the Secret One." I shook my head. I am the least of beings. My life is not my own. Fate that led me away from my own people has now led me away from the Autori. I did not want to tell him I had become one of the tribe. "You need help?" he said. "We will always help you. Come to us at the Outcasts' Bridge." "Where is that?" "Where we tan the hides between Yamagata and Suwano. Ask for Jo-an." He then said the third prayer, giving thanks for the food. "I must go," I said. "First, would you give me a blessing, Lord?" I placed my right hand on his head and began the prayer my mother used to say to me. I felt uncomfortable, knowing I had little right to speak these words, but they came easily off my tongue. Jo-an took my hand and touched his forehead and lips to my fingers. I realized then how deeply he trusted me. He released my hand and bowed his head to the ground. When he raised it again, I was on the far side of the street. The sky was paling, the dawn air cool. I slipped back from doorway to doorway. The temple bell rang out. The town was stirring. The first of the shutters were being taken down, and the smell of smoke from kitchen fires wafted through the streets. I had stayed far too long with Jo-an. I had not used my second self all night, but I felt split in half, as if I had left my true self permanently beneath the willow tree with him. The self that was returning to the tribe was hollow. When I came to the Muto house, the nagging thought had been at the back of my mind all night surfaced. How was I going to get across the overhang of the wall from the street? The white plaster, the grey tiles shone in the dawn light, mocking me. I crouched in the shelter of the house opposite, deeply regretting my own rashness and stupidity. I'd lost my focus and concentration. My hearing was as acute as ever, but the inner certainty, the instinct was gone. I couldn't stay where I was. In the distance I heard the tramp of feet, the pad of hoofs. A group of men was approaching. Their voices floated towards me. I thought I recognized the Western accent that would mark them as Arise men. I knew that if they found me, my life with the tribe would be over. My life would probably be over altogether if Arai was as insulted as had been said. I had no choice but to run to the gate and shout to the guards to open it. But as I was about to cross the street, I heard voices from beyond the wall. Akio was calling quietly to the guards. There was a creak and thud as the gate was unbarred. The patrol turned into the far end of the street. I went invisible, ran to the gate, and slipped inside. The guards did not see me, but Akio did, just as he had forestalled me at Inuyama when the tribe first seized me. He stepped into my path and grabbed both my arms. I braced myself for the blows I was certain would follow, but he did not waste any time. He pulled me swiftly towards the house. The horses of the patrol were moving faster now, coming down the street at a trot. I stumbled over the dog. It whimpered in its sleep. The riders shouted to the guards at the gate, "Good morning!" "What have you got there?" one of the guards replied. "None of your business." As Akio pulled me up into the house, I looked back. Through the narrow space between the bathhouse and the wall, I could just see the open gate and the street beyond. Behind the two horses, 2 men on foot were dragging a captive between them. I could not see him clearly, but I could hear his voice. I could hear his prayers. It was my outcast, Joanne. Bugger. I must have made a lunge off the step towards the gate, for Akio pulled me back with a force that almost dislocated my shoulder. Then he hit me, silently and efficiently, on the side of the neck. The room spun sickeningly. Still without speaking, he dragged me into the main room, where the maid was sweeping the matting. She took no notice of us at all. He called out to the kitchen as he opened the wall of the hidden room and pushed me inside. Kenji's wife came into the room, and Akio slid the door shut. Her face was pale and her eyes puffy, as though she was still fighting sleep. I could feel her fury before she spoke. She slapped me twice across the face. "You little bastard! You half-bred idiot! How dare you do that to me?" She mad? Akio pushed me to the floor, still holding my arms behind my back. I lowered my head in submission. There didn't seem to be any point in saying anything. "Kenji warned me you'd try to get out. I didn't believe him. Why did you do it?" When I didn't reply, she knelt too and raised my head so she could see my face. I kept my eyes turned away. "Answer me. Are you insane?" Just to see if I could. She sighed in exasperation, sounding like her husband. "I don't like being shut in," I muttered. "It's madness," Akio said angrily. "He's a danger to us all. We should—" She interrupted him swiftly. "That decision can only be taken by the Kakuta Master. Until then, our task is to try to keep him alive and out of Arai's hands." She gave me another cuff round the head, but a less serious one. "Who saw you?" "No one. Just an outcast." "What outcast?" "A leather worker, Joanne." "Joanne? The lunatic? The one who saw the angel?" She took a deep breath. "Don't tell me he saw you." "We talked for a while," I admitted. "Arai's men have already picked the outcast up," Akio said. "I hope you realize just what a fool you are," she said. I bowed my head again. I was thinking about Joanne, wishing I'd seen him home. If he had any home in Yamagata, wondering if I could rescue him, demanding silently to know what his God's purpose was for him now. Demanding silently to know what his God's purpose was for him now. "I am often afraid," he had said, terrified. Pity and remorse twisted my heart. find out what the outcast gives away," Kenji's wife said to Akio. "He won't betray me," I said. "Under torture, everyone betrays," he replied bitterly, not briefly. "We should bring forward your journey," she went on. "Perhaps you should even leave today." Akio was still kneeling behind me, holding me by the wrists. I felt the movement as he nodded. "Is he to be punished?" he said. No, he has to be able to travel. Besides, as you should have realized by now, physical punishment makes no impression on him. However, make sure he knows exactly what the outcast suffers. His head may be stubborn, but his heart is soft. The masters say it is his main weakness," Akio remarked. "Yes, if it weren't for that we might have another Shintaro." "Soft hearts can be hardened," Akio muttered. "Well, you Kikuta know best how to do that." I remained kneeling on the floor while they discussed me as coldly as if I were some commodity, a vat of wine, perhaps that might turn out to be a particularly fine one, or might be tainted and worthless. "What now?" Akio said. "Is he to be tied up until we leave?" "Kenji said you chose to come to us," she said to me. "If that's true, why do you try to escape?" "I came back." "Will you try again?" "No." "Will you go to Matsue with the actors and do nothing to endanger them or yourself?" "Yes." She thought for a moment and told Akio to tie me up anyway. After he'd done so, they left me to make preparations for our departure. The maid came with a tray of food and tea and helped me to eat and drink without saying a word. After she had taken away the bowls, no one came near me. I listened to the sound of the house and thought I discerned all the harshness and cruelty that lay beneath its everyday song. A huge weariness came over me. I crawled to the mattress, made myself as comfortable as I could, thought hopelessly of Joanne, and my own stupidity, and fell asleep. But wait, there's more. I woke suddenly, my heart pounding, my throat dry. I had been dreaming of the outcast, a terrible dream in which, from far away, an insistent voice, as small as a mosquito's, was whispering something only I could hear. Akio must have had his face pressed up against the outside wall. He described every detail of Joanne's torture at the hands of Arai's men. It went on and on in a slow monotone, making my skin crawl and my stomach turn. Now and then he would fall silent for long periods. I would think with relief it was over, then his voice would begin again. I could not even put my fingers in my ears. There was no escape from it. Kenji's wife was right. It was the worst punishment she could have devised for me. I wished above all I had killed the outcast when I first saw him on the riverbank. Pity had stayed my hand then, but that pity had had fatal results. I would have given Joanne a swift and merciful death. Now, because of me, he was suffering torment. When Akio's voice finally died away, I heard Yuki's tread outside. She stepped into the room carrying a bowl, scissors, and a razor. The maid, Sadako, followed her with an armful of clothes, placed them on the floor, and then went silently out of the room. I heard Sadako tell Akio that the midday meal was ready, heard him get to his feet, and followed her to the kitchen. The smell of food floated through the house, but I had no appetite. "I have to cut your hair," Yuki said. I still wore it in the warrior style, restrained as Ichiro, my former teacher in Shigeru's household, had insisted, but unmistakable. The forehead shaved, the back hair caught up in a top knot. It had not been trimmed for weeks, nor had I shaved my face, though I still had very little beard. Yuki untied my hands and legs and made me sit in front of her. "You are an idiot," she said as she began to cut. I didn't answer. I was already aware of that, but also I knew I would probably do the same thing again. "My mother was so angry. I don't know which surprised her more, that you'd been able to put her to sleep, or that you dared to." Bits of hair were falling around me. At the same time, she was almost excited. Yuki went on. "She says you remind her of Shintaro when he was your age." "She knew him?" "I'll tell you a secret. She burned for him. She'd have married him, but it didn't suit the tribe, so she married my father instead. Anyway, I don't think she could bear for anyone to have that power over her. Shintaro was a master of the Kikuta sleep. No one was safe from him." Yuki was animated, more chatty than I'd ever known her. I could feel her hand trembling slightly against my neck as the scissors snipped cold on my scalp. I remembered Kenji's dismissive words about his wife, the girls he'd slept with. Their marriage was like most, an arranged alliance between two families. "If she'd married Shintaro, I would have been someone else," Yuki said pensively. "I don't think she ever stopped loving him in her heart. Even though he was a murderer." "He wasn't a murderer, no more than you are." Something in her voice told me the conversation was moving onto dangerous ground. I found Yuki very attractive. I knew she had strong feelings for me, but I did not feel for her what I had felt for Keide, and I did not want to be talking about love. I tried to change the subject. "I thought the sleep thing was something only Kikuta do. Wasn't Shintaro from the Kuroda family?" "On his father's side, his mother was Kikuta. Shintaro and your father were cousins." It chilled me to think that the man whose death I'd caused, whom everyone said I resembled, should have been a relative. "What exactly happened the night Shintaro died?" Yuki said curiously. "I heard someone climbing into the house. The window of the first floor was open because of the heat. Lord Shigeru wanted to take him alive, but when we seized him, we all three fell into the garden. The intruder hit his head on a rock, but we thought he also took poison in the moment of the fall. Anyway, he died without regaining consciousness. Your father confirmed it was Kuroda Shintaro. Later we learned that Shigeru's uncles, the Otori lords, had hired him to assassinate Shigeru." "It's extraordinary," Yuki said, "that you should have been there and no one knew who you were." I answered her unguardedly, disarmed perhaps by the memories of that night. "Not so extraordinary. Shigeru was looking for me when he rescued me at Mino. He already knew of my existence, and knew my father had been an assassin." Lord Shigeru had told me this when we had talked in Suwano, I had asked him if that was why he had sought me out, and he had told me it was the main reason, but not the only one. I never found out what the other reasons might have been, and now I never would. Yuki's hands had gone still. My father was not aware of that. No, he was allowed to believe that Shigeru acted on an impulse, that he saved my life and brought me to Hagi purely by chance. You can't be serious. Too late, her intensity aroused my suspicions. What does it matter now? How did Lord Otori find out something that even the tribe had not suspected? What else did he tell you? He told me many things, I said impatiently. He and Ichiro taught me almost everything I know. I mean about the tribe. I shook my head as if I did not understand. Nothing. I know nothing about the tribe other than what your father taught me, and what I've learnt here. She stared at me. I avoided looking at her directly. There's a whole lot more to learn, she said finally. I'll be able to teach you on the road. She ran her hands over my cropped hair and stood in one movement like her mother. Put these on. I'll bring you something to eat. I'm not hungry, I said, reaching over and picking up the clothes. Once brightly coloured, they had faded to dull orange and brown. I wondered who had worn them and what had befallen him on the road. We have many hours of travel ahead, she said. We may not eat again today. Whatever Akio and I tell you to do, you do. If we tell you to brew the dirt under our fingernails and drink it, you do it. If we say eat, you eat, and you don't do anything else. We learned this sort of obedience when we were children. You have to learn it now. I wanted to ask her if she had been obedient when she'd brought Shigeru's sword, Jato, to me in Inuyama, but it seemed wiser to say nothing. I changed into the actor's clothes, and when Yuki came back with food, I ate without question. She watched me silently, and when I'd finished, she said, The outcast is dead. They wanted my heart hardened. I did not look at her or reply. He said nothing about you, she went on. I did not know an outcast would have such courage. He had no poison to release himself, yet he said nothing. I thanked Joanne in my heart, thanked the hidden who take their secrets with them. Where? Into paradise? Into another life? Into the silencing fire? The silent grave? I wanted to pray for him, after the fashion of our people, or light candles and burn incense for him, as Ichiro and Chiyo taught me in Shigeru's house in Hagi. I thought of Joanne, going alone into the dark. What would his people do without him? Do you pray to anyone? Do you pray to anyone? I asked Yuki. Of course, she said, surprised. Who to? The Enlightened One, in all his forms. The gods of the mountain, the forest, the river, all the old ones. This morning I took rice and flowers to the shrine at the bridge to ask a blessing on our journey. I'm glad we're leaving today after all. It's a good day for travelling. All the signs are favourable. She looked at me, as if she were thinking it all over, then shook her head. Don't ask things like that. It makes you sound so different. No one else would ask that. No one else has lived my life. You're one of the tribe now. Try and behave like it. She took a small bag from inside her sleeve and passed it to me. Here, Akio said to give you these. I opened it and felt inside, then tipped the contents out. 5 juggler's balls, smooth and firm, packed with rice grain, fell onto the floor. Much as I hated juggling, it was impossible not to pick them up and handle them. With 3 in my right hand and 2 in my left, I stood up. The feel of the balls, the actor's clothes, had already turned me into someone else. You are Minoru, Yuki said. These would have been given to you by your father. Akio is your older brother. I am your sister. We don't look very alike, I said, tossing the balls up. We will become alike enough, Yuki replied. My father said you could change your features to some extent. What happened to our father? Round and back the balls went, the circle, the fountain. He's dead. Convenient. She ignored me. We're travelling to Matsue for the autumn festival. It will take 5 or 6 days, depending on the weather. Arai still has men looking for you, but the main search here is over. He has already left for Inuyama. We travel in the opposite direction. At night we have safe houses to go to, but the road belongs to no one. If we meet any patrols, you'll have to prove who you are. I dropped one of the balls and bent to retrieve it. You can't drop them, Yuki said. No one of your age ever drops them. My father also said you could impersonate well. Don't bring any of us into danger. We left from the back entrance. Kenji's wife came out to bid us farewell. She looked me over, checked my hair and clothes. I hope we meet again, she said, but knowing your recklessness, I hardly expect it. I bowed to her, saying nothing. Akio was already in the yard, with a handcart like the one I'd been bundled into in Inuyama. He told me to get inside, and I climbed in among the props and costumes. Yuki handed me my knife. I was pleased to see it again, and tucked it away inside my clothes. Akio lifted the cart handles and began to push. I rocked through the town in semi-darkness, listening to its sounds and to the speech of the actors. I recognized the voice of the other girl from Inuyama, Keiko. There was one other man with us too. I'd heard his voice in the house, but had not set eyes on him. When we were well beyond the last houses, Akio stopped, opened the side of the cart, and told me to get out. It was about the second half of the Hour of the Goat, and still very warm despite the onset of autumn. Mood. Akio gleamed with sweat. He had removed most of his clothes to push the cart. I could see how strong he was. He was taller than me and much more muscular. He went to drink from the stream that ran beside the road and splashed water onto his head and face. Yuki, Keiko, and the older man were squatting by the side of the road. I would hardly have recognized any of them. They were completely transformed into a troupe of actors, making a precarious living from town to town, existing on their wits and talents, always on the verge of starvation or crime. Crime. The man gave me a grin, showing his missing teeth. His face was lean, expressive, and slightly sinister. Keiko ignored me. Like Akio, she had half-healed scars on one hand from my knife. I took a deep breath. Hot as it was infinitely better than the room I'd been shut up in, and the stifling cart. Behind us lay the town of Yamagata, the castle white against the mountains, which were still mostly green and luxuriant, with splashes of colour here and there, where the leaves had started to turn. The rice fields were turning gold too. It would soon be harvest time. To the southwest, I could see the steep slope of Terayama, but the roofs of the temple were invisible behind the cedars. Beyond lay fold after fold of mountains, turning blue in the distance, shimmering in the afternoon haze. Silently I said farewell to Shigeru, reluctant to turn away and break my last tie with him, and with my life as one of the Otori. Akio gave me a blow on the shoulder. "Stop dreaming like an imbecile," he said. His voice changed into a rougher accent and dialect. "It's your turn to push." By the time evening came, I'd conceived the deepest hatred possible for that cart. It was heavy and unwieldy, blistering the hands and straining the back. Pulling it uphill was bad enough, as the wheels caught in potholes and ruts, and it took all of us to get it free. But hanging on to it downhill was even harder. I would happily have let it go and sent it hurtling into the forest. I thought longingly of my horse, Raku. The older man, Kazuo, walked alongside me, helping me to adjust my accent and telling me the words I needed to know in the private language of actors. Some Kenji had already taught me, the dark street slang of the tribe. Some were new to me. I mimicked him as I'd mimicked Ichiro, my Otori teacher, in a very different kind of learning, and tried to think myself into becoming Minoru. Towards the end of the day, when the light was beginning to fade, we descended a slope towards the village. The road levelled out, and the surface grew smoother. A man walking home called the evening greeting to us. I always thought Japanese peasants didn't have access to wheeled carts. I always thought they had to, carry everything. Then again, this is not Japan. This is a Japanese-like fantasy world. I could smell wood smoke and food cooking. All around me rose the sounds of the village at the end of the day. The splash of water as the farmers washed, children playing and squabbling, women gossiping as they cooked, the crackle of the fires, the chink of axe on wood, the shrine bell, the whole web of life that I'd been raised in. And I caught something else. The clink of a bridle, the muffled stamp of a horse's feet. "There's a patrol ahead," I said to Kazuo. He held up his hand for us to stop and called quietly to Akio. "Minoru says there's a patrol." Akio squinted at me against the setting sun. "You heard them?" "I can hear horses. What else would it be?" He nodded and shrugged as if to say, "As good now as any time. Take the cart." As I took Akio's place, Kazuo began to sing a rowdy comic song. He had a good voice. It rang out into the still evening air. Yuki reached into the cart and took out a small drum, which she threw to Akio. Catching it, he began to beat out the rhythm of a song. Yuki also brought out a one-stringed instrument, which she twanged as she walked beside us. Keiko had spinning tops, like the ones that had captured my attention at Inuyama. Singing and playing, we rounded the corner and came to the patrol. They had set up a bamboo barrier just before the first houses of the village. There were about 9 or 10 men, most of them sitting on the ground eating. They wore a Rise Bear crest on their jackets. The setting sun banners of the Seshu had been erected on the bank. 4 horses grazed beneath them. A swarm of children hung around, and when they saw us, they ran towards us, shouting and giggling. Kazuo broke off his song to direct a couple of riddles at them, and shouted impudently to the soldiers, "What's going on, lads?" Their commander rose to his feet and approached us. We all immediately dropped to the dust. "Get up," he said. "Where have you come from?" He had a squarish face, with heavy brows, a thin mouth, and a clenched jaw. He wiped the rice from his lips on the back of his hand. "Yamagata." Akio handed the drum to Yuki and held out a wooden tablet. It had our names inscribed on it, the name of our guild, and our license from the city. The commander gazed at it for a long time, deciphering our names, every now and then looking across at each of us in turn, scanning our faces. Keiko was spinning the tops. The men watched her with more than idle interest. Players were the same as prostitutes as far as they were concerned. One of them made a mocking suggestion to her. She laughed back. I leaned against the cart and wiped the sweat from my face. "What's he do, Minoru?" the commander said, handing the tablet back to Akio. "My younger brother. He's a juggler. Is the family calling? "Let's see him," the commander said, his thin lips parting in a sort of smile. Akio did not hesitate for a moment. "Hey, little brother, show the Lord." I wiped my hands on my headband, and tied it back round my head. I took the balls from their bag, felt their smooth weight, and in an instant became Minoru. This was my life. I had never known any other. The road, the new village, the suspicious, hostile stares. I forgot my tiredness, my aching head, and blistered hands. I was Minoru, doing what I'd done since I was old enough to stand. The balls flew in the air. I did 4 first, then 5. I'd just finished the second sequence of the fountain when Akio jerked his head at me. I let the balls flow in his direction. He caught them effortlessly, throwing the tablet into the air with them. Then he sent them back to me. The sharp edge of the tablet caught my blistered palm. I was angry with him, wondering what his intention was. To show me up? To betray me? I lost the rhythm. Tablet and balls fell into the dust. The smile left the commander's face. He took a step forward. In that moment, a mad impulse came into my mind. To give myself up to him, to throw myself on Arai's mercy, escape the tribe before it was too late. Akio seemed to fly towards me. "Idiot!" he yelled, giving me a cuff round the ear. Our father would cry out from his grave. As soon as he raised his hand to me, I knew my disguise would not be penetrated. It would have been unthinkable for an actor to strike an Otori warrior. The blow turned me into Minoru again, as nothing else could have done. "Forgive me, older brother," I said, picking up the balls and the tablet. I kept them spinning in the air until the commander laughed and waved us forward. "Come and see us tonight," Keiko called to the soldiers. "Yes, tonight," they called back. Kazuo began to sing again, Yuki to beat the drum. I threw the tablet to Akio and put the balls away. They were darkened with blood. I picked up the handles of the cart. The barrier was lifted aside, and we walked through to the village beyond. End of chapter 3. Yay. Claps. The next chapter, I hope to stream again next week. Yeah, thank you, Pixie. I hope to stream again next week. I'm not sure because, if you don't know, my grandma is currently she's not well. She's probably got a few days left, so we'll see what happens. I mean, it's not exactly a surprise. I just thought, we might have a bit more time with her, that's all. But she had a fall in respite, and I think that was it. So, yeah. These things happen. But, yeah. Next chapter is from Keide's point of view. So we will return to that probably next week. Well, yeah. I tried to stream Tuesday and Wednesday. Regardless. I hope you've all enjoyed the story so far. I know it's kind of it's setting up like it's a little bit, I won't say boring, but it's not as exciting as, sneaking through a castle and assassinating people. or the love story between Takeo and Keide. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. Hopefully it should get a little bit more spicy now that the kind of beginnings have gone past. So yeah, chapter 4, next Tuesday, I believe. Who have we got? We have Ali, who is doing a birthday subathon. We have Acid, who's playing Mass Effect, which honestly, I'm thinking Acid. Let's see if Acid is into the game or if she's wrapping up or what. So we shouted out Kitty's playing earlier. Definitely, I think everyone here knows Kitty. But if you don't follow Kitty Splain, I'll give Kitty another shout out. Please do so, because Kitty is a lovely streamer who streams occasionally, and
Glory to you and your house.
And she occasionally, she's just made affiliate. She's going to be getting emotes, and she does crafts and chatting, and she's a lovely streamer to just watch while she does crafts and chatting, and you can talk to her. You can say things, and she'll say them back. Amazing how it works. Adore Kitty's Plane? Yeah, me too. Kitty is lovely. Okay, so before Acid finishes, we're going to raid. Okay. Oh, that's Acid's chat. I don't want to type that in Acid's chat. That'll give it away. Okay, copy a raid command. Give your mouse a shake or your screen a shake to make sure you're in the raid. And we'll go raid Acid, who is a lovely bean and deserves all of our love. And she got new glasses too, and she's wearing cat ears, which is nice. Oh, I have to type the thing. /raid acid.exe. There we go. Cool. Okay, everyone. Please join the raid. Wake up, join the raid. She doesn't have I've already tripped the noise, so when we raid it won't oh well. Alright, everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next week, or if not before, but Story time continues next Tuesday. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please join the raid.